to another electrifying episode of AIBiz. I'm your host Avik, and today we are venturing into a space where curiosity meets the code and risk meets revolution. So, dear listeners, let me ask you on this. Have you ever felt like technology was moving faster than your ability to understand it? Or are you intrigued or maybe even a little uneasy about the pace of AI innovation? So, what happens when one of the world's leading minds in risk and business growth drives headfirst into the world of artificial intelligence? And also, here's the big one, can AI actually help us become more human in how we feed, how we lead, how we create, and how we grow, right? Well, today's guest has been down that rabbit hole and he's back with a map. Joining me is Steve Anderson. So, welcome to the show, Steve.
Avik, thank you for having me. Such fun.
Lovely, lovely. So, Steve, before we start, I'll quickly love to introduce you to all the listeners. Dear listeners, Steve is the best selling author of the Bezos Letters, a strategic advisor to businesses worldwide, and a thinker who's spent decades helping organizations scale smart. And he's decoded Bezos. Yes. Now he's decoding the future. Yeah. And in this episode, we are diving into his personal journey into AI, not from the sidelines, but from a seat at the edge of the future. So, why to wait? Let's get started. Welcome to the show again.
Well, again, great to be here. I'll look forward to our conversation.
Amazing, amazing. So, Steve, just to rewind a bit, uh, what was the moment that pulled you into the AI rabbit hole? Was it curiosity, caution, or something entirely else?
I would say a combination of several things. Certainly curiosity.
Mm.
And as you mentioned, I wrote the book, The Bezos Letter, where I
Yeah.
really looked at the letters to shareholders that Jeff Bezos wrote.
Mm.
And in one of those letters, in 2016, if my memory serves me correct, he talks about how to maintain a company's forward direction. And one of the core tenets of why that book came about is I began a number of years ago now asking the question if the biggest risk businesses face is actually not taking enough risk. And
Mm.
I come out of the insurance industry, which is very counterintuitive, right? Because we're all about reducing risk, transferring risk,
Mm.
mitigating risk, et cetera. But in that 2016 letter, he talks about what happens to companies when they stop thinking and moving forward. What he has a concept he calls day one, which is always thinking like a startup, always pushing forward. The
Okay.
other side to that is a day two company, and what he said, day two companies
Mm.
um, do a slow decline. So what he said that caught my attention and kind of keeps me thinking
Mm.
is there are several things you can do as a company to help continue to move forward. And one of those, I won't go into all of them, but one of those is what he calls eager adoption of external trends.
Okay.
And he actually referenced one of those trends when he was talking about this called machine learning. Now, we know that was a step. Machine learning is still important, but that was a step along the artificial intelligent development timeline. That was
Mm.
2016, way before, and OpenAI and ChatGPT, right? All those things. But
Mm.
I think I was already primed to be thinking that way. And I've spent my career helping insurance agents
Mhm.
with technology. So I'm always looking at what's coming.
Mm.
So curiosity, what's new, is this a big deal? Is it not a big deal? And probably that was 2.5 years ago now. And as I describe it, I started the journey down the AI rabbit hole.
Mm. Okay. Understood. Understood. Totally understood. Ah, and I mean, like looking back, like how was your perspective evolved from that first impression to right now? I mean, this time, yeah.
Well, um, it's really interesting we're talking because I literally 15, 20 minutes ago got off a webinar with insurance agents talking about AI. And actually, this is the first in a series of 6. So over the next
Okay.
6 weeks, an hour-ish each week, I'm gonna go deep with them into AI, and it's what I've been learning and how I've been, building expertise, and skill in this area, and I told them, that I really believe this is, um I certainly as important as the internet. I
Mhm.
suspect we will look back going, "It was way more important than the internet was." And so, I wanted to be part of that, evolution, revolution, um, to help the audience that I have
Mhm.
worked with for a long time.
Okay. Ah, and I mean, as someone who built a career on understanding risk, so how do you personally evaluate the risk versus opportunities of AI?
Well, certainly there are potential risks,
Hmm.
and there are
Mm.
tools available. I'm thinking right now of,
Mm.
a ChatGPT paid account where you
Okay.
can, turn off data sharing, and you don't put information into it that is proprietary, is personally identifiable information. I mean, there are things to protect that. And
Mm.
I always talk about keeping a human in the loop. So you don't
Okay.
just let it generate and
Mhm.
copy and paste it. I'm very adamant, I guess, about you've got to review it. You have the expertise to know whether it's right or wrong.
Mm.
And so, I mean, those are the kinds of things that put,
Mm.
kind of guardrails around
Yeah.
um, making sure um, it's right and being appropriate, and you're using it in a good way.
Mhm. Okay. And like okay. And I imagine that you see both the deception and potential. So how do you advise people to write that uh, line strategically rather than fearfully?
So one of the things I had started doing
Hmm.
is consulting with businesses on AI,
Okay.
how to implement it, and an AI strategy or manifesto.
Okay.
What does the leadership, CEO, owner, whatever that looks like, what do they think about AI? And how are they communicating that to their employees? Are they telling them, no, we're not doing it? Or are they telling them, yeah, actually, this is something we should be experimenting with. And here are the guardrails. Here's what you can do. Here's what you can't do. Certainly, one of those is data, right? Here's the data you can put in. And I think of it as kind of a stoplight, right? Green, yellow, red. Green is absolutely yellow.
Mm.
Think about it before you put it
Okay.
in. And red is absolutely not. And so giving employees a guideline and permission to experiment.
True.
Nobody really knows yet, I don't think,
Mhm.
how it can impact a business. So you need to try it and see. And I think those
Mm.
are really key areas. And for me, I continue to experiment, meaning
Okay.
I try new things. And so I will tell you, one of the things I created
Mhm.
is a chatbot.
Okay.
And I really don't like that term, but I haven't come up with a better one because I feel like that chatbot term has baggage from 5 years
Mm.
ago, right? When the bad website chatbots,
Mm.
didn't do anything well.
Okay.
But I created a chatbot I call Ask Jeff Bezos.
Oh.
So it um, it is trained. It probably already had the information, but it's trained on my book. It's trained um, on interviews from transcript of interviews. It's trained on
Mhm.
information, and you literally can just, what would you like to ask Jeff Bezos, and it will use that information to
Mm.
respond. Um, and if people listening want to try it, there's no cost to it. It's
Mhm.
located at Bezos, Bezos, period, if you could ask. So the domain is if you could ask. The subdomain is
Mm.
Bezos, period, .com. I kind of got that domain, frankly, because wouldn't it be interesting to be able to ask Warren Buffett and Elon
Okay.
Musk and,
Mm.
who I don't know who else, based
Mm.
on, their public information. So, but that's an experiment, right? That's a interest to me, it's just interesting and
Mm.
seeing what questions people ask and how I can tweak and improve the responses
Mhm.
that people get so they get the information that's actually really helpful to them. And
Mm.
frankly, for me, it's another way to engage with readers.
Exactly. Exactly. Very true. Yeah. Like, and also like you mentioned about Bezos, so you studied him, the mindset deeply, and that entire framework that you built around it. So how would Bezos approach this AI revelation? I mean, any of you? I mean, if you share.
Um, well, let me first say, um, the book talks about 14 principles to grow your business like Amazon.
Mm.
So 14's a lot. And so I categorize those into 4 different cycles that I believe businesses are always going through: test,
Mm.
build, accelerate, and scale. And
Mm.
my AI journey is very much informed by those principles. So, for example, in the test cycle, where businesses, a startup's testing an idea, they have something they think is great, they're figuring out what's going to work and what's not going to work. The first principle is called encourage successful failure. Now,
Okay.
that's interesting because people kind of stop and go, actually, those two words aren't typically used together, successful and failure. You can't,
Mhm.
right? And at Amazon, Bezos
Mm.
really built into the culture the idea that experiments are necessary to move forward. And if you're going to do an experiment, you're going to fail. Because if you know you're not going to fail when you do an experiment, it's not an experiment. And so often businesses punish employees for failing. And at Amazon, they actually encourage people trying new things and don't punish failure. Now, I also will say Amazon has an intolerance for incompetence. So this is not stupid things. This is intentional, strategic. Let's
Mm.
think through everything before we start and
Mm.
try and mitigate the failures that we have, but we know we're going to have them. And then what can we learn from that? So that's again for me an example. I talk about experimenting a lot as the first steps to figure out what's going to work for you and what isn't.
Mm.
So that's, and again, I could talk about several of the principles, but even for my own journey, those are always part of how I think and how I do things because I do think one, Bezos
Mhm.
was fairly successful. I think people would agree with that.
Mm.
And there was an intentionality about how he got to that success.
Okay.
Um, I think two other principles, if I'll mention.
Sure.
So we talked about test cycle. In the build cycle, so after you've tested something, you've got something going, you're trying to build it, right?
Oh.
And the first principle in there is called obsess over customers.
Sure.
And so That is the core idea at Amazon, was from the very beginning. In his first letter to shareholders in 1997, so they went public that year. And again, the letters to shareholders is typical for a public company. But he talked about three main areas, one of which was we will obsess over customers. And I still kind of stop when I use that word obsess because that's such an interesting word. It's often negative. You're so obsessive, right? But can you be too obsessive with customers? And part of what he talks about a lot is we invent on behalf of the customer. And then, so even kind of let's take that back to the formation of Amazon Web Services, AWS, which is
Yeah.
now deeply into the AI space, right? Providing tools and infrastructure for other businesses. That's an example of obsessing over customers. Amazon built that for internal use,
Mhm.
but they realized that other businesses could offload their compute, wouldn't have to buy servers, wouldn't have to wouldn't have to invest in all of that. They could just use or rent from Amazon. But that's part of that concept. And then the third one I'll mention, which I think as a business grows, so this is in the accelerate cycle, is generate high velocity decisions. So again, one of the characteristics of a company who's on their way down is the decision making process. So Bezos describes it as a one-way door and a two-way door. So two types of decisions. So door one-way doors, are decisions that are very consequential,
Mhm.
really hard to change once you decide it. And what he says about those decisions are they should be made slowly with as much data as possible and gut feeling and by senior leadership. He said the problem is that as business grow, they tend to look at decision making as all type 1. And he says they're not. There are very few type 1 decisions in a company. The
Mhm.
more common decision is the type 2, reversible, meaning, and that's again connected to encourage successful failure being if you make a decision to move forward and you realize you get a few steps down the way that this was not right, this is not going to work, this whatever. Those decisions are more easily walked back or pivoted, changed direction, but they're not that consequential. And the problem with day 2 companies is that their decision-making process just slows down growth. So they get into this long cycle of downward and not continuing to invent on behalf of the customer, continuing on growing, finding new market, right? All of those kinds of things. And and again, I see that a lot with AI, right? How many businesses are sitting back going, "Oh, that's stupid. We're not going to do that. We've never been able to do, we
Mhm.
that's not gonna work," or "It's too risky," or "I don't believe it's gonna be anything." They're slowing down their growth by not at least experimenting, and maybe they don't need it. Maybe they shouldn't, but they don't know. They're making a decision just based on, "We've never done that," which is always a bad thing to do.
So, like many people see AI as a tech problem, right? Uh, but you have mentioned before it really a I mean, it really a thinking problem.
Yes.
So what mental shifts do leaders need to make to stay relevant?
I think a couple things come to mind. One is
Hmm.
people are changing. And it's not just US, it's not just India, it's worldwide. People are changing. Expectations continue to change. There are certainly companies like Amazon who are driving some of those
Hmm.
expectation changes. I mean, I just week or two ago, I ordered something from Amazon that I wanted, and I
Okay.
got it in 2 hours. I mean, literally
Mm,
clicked by, 2 hours later, it was on my front porch. That is a significant expectation, and
mm,
if business owners, CEOs, I don't care what size company, are not thinking about what impact this might have, um,
mm,
then they are slowing down their business, and they will have a disadvantage for those other businesses, their competitors, who are moving forward and may stumble and fail along the way, but they're still going to be a lot further ahead. So the mindset shift is, yes, we've
mm,
been successful, but how do we continue to be successful?
sure.
And a lot of times people get stuck in what got them there, but don't realize that what got them there won't get them further. And that's the mindset shift. And again, I think Bezos did that really well at Amazon, certainly with that day one mentality, always thinking like a startup.
Mm, that's a great one answer. Yeah. And like and also like how does those AI challenge our current mental models like
Yes.
around the leadership, growth, failure as well? I mean, if I could share.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
No question. And I think one of the great uses of AI right now is as a thought partner for leaders, right? I have built a brainstorming tool that does an amazing job of helping me look at a problem or something I'm trying to accomplish, but gives me different perspectives that I might not have thought, I probably wouldn't have thought of. So thought partner in, okay, let's go deeper. What am I missing? What should I be, a great question to ask is, what question should I be asking about this data or
Mm,
this problem or this thing that I'm missing? And again,
okay,
it's been trained on the world's information, so it may have suggestions you never thought of.
sure. Like okay. So I mean what's the one personal insight you will say, like from your journey with the AI that has surprised you, maybe even changed how you see yourself or your work?
S- I, what I'm thinking is AI, the tools are amazing. And again, if it's OpenAI's ChatGPT, if it's Anthropic's
Mm-hmm.
Claude, if it's Google's Gemini, and they have improved significantly over the last couple of years. And
Okay.
they still need me. I'm not
Mm,
going to be replaced by them. They're going to augment what I do. They're going to help what I do. They're going to
mm,
do stuff I don't like to do. And I still need to be the final authority, the final person, the final review
mm,
before anything they do goes out.
mhm.
That's why I'm a little, I would say, a little skeptical of agentic AI and having it make decisions. We'll see. I'm following it, etc. But that person in the loop, I think, is really a key part to maximizing the benefit and minimizing the risk of using these tools.
Okay, that's cool. That's definitely true. And one thing, I mean, it might sounds contradictory, but it's not. Like some people argue that big tech, not the entrepreneurs, will ultimately dominate the AI revolution. So, what do you say to the scrappy business owner who feels locked out of this future?
Um, I think there's a dilemma.
Okay.
The big tech, again, let's use
Uh-huh.
Google, Anthropic, right? Um,
mm, mm,
it takes a lot of capital to build these models.
mm,
A solopreneur or an entrepreneur with a few people l- just can't do that. And I kind of go back to the AWS idea model, which is
mhm,
Amazon invests
mhm,
billions and billions of dollars to create the data centers that many, 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 many businesses tap into. So they don't have to spend all of that capital cost to build out data centers and all of that. It's a good business for Amazon and it's
mm,
a good tool. Again, when AWS first started, I mean, the numbers I'm have in my head is a startup company needed 5 to
mhm.
$10 million just for infrastructure.
So,
With AWS, they needed 5,000. So significant difference. So I do think the foundational models
mhm,
need to be part can only be developed, I would say that, in a large organization that has the capital to be able to do that. And they need a return on capital just like anybody else. And so having smaller companies be able to access those tools, I think will be a good business model for them and frankly a good business model for, the
mm,
smaller organization. I mean, again, for me, I give you just my example. I am
mm.
building AI tools for insurance agents.
Okay.
I know their processes, I know what they need, I know how they work, right? All of that.
Mm,
I'm not going to build a model. I'm going to use the best model that for what I'm trying to accomplish. That might be ChatGPT, and it might be a
mhm,
couple of different models there. It might be Claude. I've been playing around with the latest Claude 4, Sonnet, and Claude 4 Opus. It might be Google's Gemini. Google's
mhm,
Gemini 2.5 is doing a really good job with deep research right now. So I'll use
okay.
the model to get the results that I'm looking for the clients and then charge a subscription. So I think of it as a mini SaaS, software as a
Mhm,
service. Again, building on top, and there's some risk there, right? I'm building on top of
mm,
somebody else. That's a risk.
mhm,
Just like Amazon marketplace sellers build their business on Amazon, that's a risk. And they don't have the resources to build that infrastructure themselves. They don't have the resources to build a logistics infrastructure that can get what somebody orders from their website to their home in 2 hours.
mhm,
Amazon can do that, and they've been spending billions for years to build that up.
mm,
So,
mm,
that was a long answer to I think the big tech
mm.
will be there, and it's shooting themselves in the foot to get rid of the small
Mhm.
guy. So,
True.
we'll see. I could be wrong.
That's true. I mean, but yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you for sharing that. And Steve, I mean, it's a really great conversation. I mean, your clarity on the risk growth and the human side of technology is exactly what this, I mean, moment calls for. So
I think so
thank you
too.
so much. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, exactly. And for everyone who is listening, I mean, remember that we do not need to fear the future. We need to engage with it, like the eyes open, mind agile, and also like heart curious. So, whether you're a solopreneur or a corporate leader or just AI curious like me, so let this episode be your invitation. Don't wait for the wave to crash. Just learn how to surf it. And Steve, like if someone wants to connect with you, how they can connect?
So the best social platform is LinkedIn. Um,
Mhm.
and again, you could search Steve Anderson uh, Bezos for the book or Steve Anderson Insurance. You'll likely find me. Let me know you listened, and I'll be glad to
Yeah.
connect with you. The book website is
Mm.
thebezosletters.com, which we can put in the show notes. And then I already gave the link to try out the Ask Jeff Bezos. Let me know what you think.
Lovely. So, dear listeners, I'll put all the links in the show notes for your easy reference. And also, this is your host, Avik, signing off from AIBiz. Till then, stay curious, stay courageous, and always choose growth over fear. So, thank you so much.